For printing our first layer, I've gathered up my supplies and I'm going to start by mixing my ink. So I'll put some gloves on just to be clean. And then I'll start mixing the ink. I'm going to mix kind of a light orange for my color. So our kits don't come with orange, it comes with yellow and red. And combining those two colors together will make orange. And then I'm going to mix just a little bit of the ink extender to kind of make it a little bit lighter, and then also make it so that it won't dry quite as quick. So these water-soluble inks dry pretty quickly, and I don't want them to dry too fast. So I'm going to start off with red. I'm making orange, and I'm really just going to use a tiny bit of red. And then I'll get like a toothpaste size amount of yellow, and I'll mix those together so I can kind of see the orange color that I'm making. And you'll see that red really affects that yellow quickly. So it's a pretty dark reddish orange. So in this case, I'm going to mix a bit more yellow into it to lighten it up. Because you want that first layer to be fairly light. And the yellow will also kind of make it a little bit more vibrant too. Now, I'm not sure about the water-soluble inks, but it tends to be that yellow colors tend to be really transparent on their own anyway, so it should be a bit lighter than normal. But that tends to be how yellows work for oil-based. And I'm not sure about the water-soluble ink, so it might not be quite as transparent as I am used to. Now, generally, when we're working with transparency, what I do is I'll put the transparent to the side first. And then what I'll do is I'll just take a little bit of the ink, just a little tiny bit, and then mix that in with the transparency, because it becomes opaque very, very quickly. In this case, I think I've got a nice light color and it doesn't really need to be that transparent. So I'm just gonna go ahead and mix all of it together. But normally I would do a little bit at a time and then do a drawdown to see what color I'm gonna get. So the color looks nice. I think it's pretty much what I'm looking for. Maybe just, don't ever settle. If it's not exactly the color that you want, feel free to keep adjusting as you go, and make sure it's the right color that you were looking for. And if anybody needs help mixing colors, just let me know and I can help you out. I think that looks better with a little bit extra yellow. So now I'm just kind of trying to mix it as well as I can. Sometimes I got to push hard down on the ink knife to get all the ink off. But just trying to make sure it's mixed up as well as possible. All right. Now to check your color, what you can do is do a drawdown on a separate sheet of paper. It's nice if you use the paper that you're printing on, but not everybody has that extra paper. So you can also just do it on a scrap sheet of newsprint, so that cheap paper. And you're just taking a little bit of that ink and then pushing it down on top of the paper. Kind of give you an idea of what it's going to look like. It'll probably be somewhere in the middle between the very, very light of like scraping it across the paper and a little bit of that thicker ink. So probably something in between there, probably a little closer to that opaqueness. Okay. So then if you like the color that you mixed up, you can start rolling up your brayer. So do a little bead of ink on there, grab your brayer. You want it to be a little bit shorter than the width of your brayer. And kind of go back and forth. You'll notice that using that extender changes the consistency of the ink a lot, so it's going to feel a little different than it normally does. And see, mine's pretty textured on there. That's a little too much, so I'm just going to take my ink knife and scrape some of the ink out and move it off to the side, and then roll it out again, and this will give me a leaner ink palette. The texture's a lot smaller now, so it's not quite as heavily textured on there. And then I'm going to, so I need to ink up my image area. I want to avoid getting any ink in the border in between, or any ink on the registration area. So I found the easiest way for me to keep that clean is to just take some tape and tape that area off. So I'll kind of go as close up to my image as I can get and kind of push that tape down so that it gets as little ink on it as possible. And I can just keep reusing that tape until it doesn't want to stick anymore. And then you just roll your image up. You'll notice when I first start rolling it up that it leaves these kind of these lines going through it. Those are called lap marks. And so what we want to do is we want to have enough ink on there and go over it in enough directions that those lap marks disappear. But not so much ink that we start losing our details and things like that. Now, I've printed this block a couple times already, but when you first start printing, some of that ink can transfer. So I told you a couple times along this process to be aware that that ink can transfer, or sorry, the Sharpie marker can transfer to the first couple prints. So I'm not sure if I printed enough that this won't transfer anymore. But so make sure you try to get rid of any lap marks in your ink. Take a look at it in the light, make sure it's got a good glisten on it, and then you're ready to print your first one. So I'm gonna move this aside, and I'll get ready for printing.